Yeah, good morning. Simi, please start the session.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with us with all of you today. Let me first invite the founder of Women Innovator, Tripti Somani. Women Innovator is the first virtual incubator of women. She is the CEO of KGS Advisors. She's a multifaceted personality, an entrepreneur, a strategist, a mentor, a problem solver, and most importantly, a warm and empathetic person. Tripti, over to you.
Thank you so much, Simi, for the warm introduction. And I'm more excited about this panel today, which you have curated, which is Learning First, Unlocking the Learning Potential. I'm really happy to have all our panelists coming from different diverse backgrounds. And I am sure this will be a great session today. So a very quick about Womennovator and what we've been doing here. Womennovator as a virtual incubator. We didn't start it as incubation, but we started by general passion to support women. And today when we renamed it as a virtual incubator, we were sure that women needs extra help, and that also virtually. So it was not the COVID which brought virtual incubation, but the thought that woman has time limitation, and to cover that up, this virtual incubation was introduced. And today I'm sure the importance of virtual for women has helped them be more effective, saving a lot of time in different ways. And as we all are doing multitasking, few of the initiative which Womennovator is working on is definitely we are working on different importance of different topics like government schemes and how we can help women accelerate their businesses. But also technologically, we have a platform called womenmark.com, which is helping them to create their branding, their distribution network, which will in turn help them create revenue streams. So today, getting the distribution of their products and services or getting franchisees for themselves is a major challenge with women facing. So one of our key focus has been this, and I'm really happy today. And as you know, that we are focusing on 100 cities of India and 20 countries today. And also we are focusing on 90 sector, and one of the sectors education, which is a key for all of us. And with this, I would like to say that our whole series on education headed by Simi, we are really very excited and passionate about it. So over to you, Simi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tripti. Let me welcome everybody for an interactive session on Learner First, Unlocking the Learning Potential. It's an honor to share this podium with experts from the education ecosystem and what we call the EdTech change makers. Classroom, be it digital or physical, don't differ all that much from 100 years ago. Curriculum and teaching methodologies have evolved, but not enough to generate interest in learning. Students are unable to apply their learnings to real life situations, leading to poor performance, anxiety, even burnout. As per the new National Education Policy recently launched 2 days ago, let me quote from there: with the quickly changing employment and global ecosystem, it is becoming increasingly important that children not only learn, but learn how to learn. There will be some discussions around the recent launch of NEP. However, we shall still keep the idea how we learn as the fulcrum of our discussion. The most liberating and challenging aspect of NEP from the learner's perspective is flexibility, choice, no hard separations between arts and science, between curricular and extracurricular activities, between vocational and academic. This is truly transformational in theory, but in practice, how does this pan out? Well, we will ask our panelists. As for the higher education, NEP has condemned the rigid separation of disciplines with too much early specialization and streaming of students into narrow areas of study. A child can now pursue physics with music. Remember, Einstein was also an accomplished violinist. Students will be given increased flexibility and choice of subjects to study, starting from secondary school, so that they are free to design their own learning paths and their career paths. Learners are free to choose their learning trajectories based on talent and interest. I'm doing something I enjoy. I'll be invested in it, and this will enhance my learning outcomes. I would now like to introduce our panel of experts. So we would say good morning to Dr. Cliff because he joins us all the way from Texas early in the morning. I would like to introduce all the panelists, and then I will invite each panelist to speak for a few minutes and thereafter leave the discussion open for everybody. Dr. Cliff Zingraf was the executive director of SAMSAT, San Antonio Museum of Science and Technology, SEM Education Center, Texas, but now he's the Chief Learning Officer. He is a PhD in learning technologies from the University of North Texas and has co-authored a book on STEM in Technopolis. Our next person is Prerna Gupta, Strategic Initiatives, Reliance Industry Limited, the Geo Institute, an institute of eminence to revolutionize Indian education. Prerna did her master's from IIT Delhi and holds an MBA from the Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania. We have Komal Sood, educationalist and currently principal of Army Public School. She is an experienced educational consultant, was the director of curriculum and training at the Shiv Nadir Foundation and the principal of Sri Ram School. We have Manish, founder and chairman, Jagan Institute of Management Studies, JIMS, celebrating 25 years of excellence. He is also an IIM Ahmedabad alumnus. He holds the Indian Leadership Award for Education Excellence and HEED, the Higher Education Entrepreneurship Development Award. We have Charu Shila Nerula, founder, director, University Connection. She's a coach and a career counselor and believes in enabling individuals, making students believe in their dreams, is what she says, revolutionizing career mentorship. University Connection is a career and college planning platform, is knowledge-driven and highly personalized. We next move to the EdTech changemakers, who believe that learners have been least served. Many EdTech startups are promising to change the narrative through personalized learning, learner-centric learnings, competency-based learnings platforms, leveraging various technologies like AI, ML. They are challenging the conventional approaches. We have Digvijay Gagneja, the COO of Leverage Edu, ex-McKinsey, ISB, IIT Kharagpur, young breed of CXOs who are transforming almost everything, be it health, education, commerce, agriculture, and you name it. At Leverage Edu, machine learning algorithms do the matchmaking and help students select the career paths and get connected with alumni of top global universities and working professionals to mentor them. We then also have Devi Prasad Baral, co-founder and CTO Financepeer. He is an alumnus of BIT, IIM Ahmedabad, Stanford Ignite. His expertise lies in enterprise architecture, IT strategy, visualization, cloud strategy, CRM, and sales platform. He has worked with Salesforce and Microsoft. Financepeer is a unique peer-to-peer lending platform and is playing a vital role in democratization of quality education, in making aspirational India realize its educational dream. COVID has adversely impacted the purchasing power of many parents, and this can be a huge impact on child's education. So I would straight away now. So this is our team of experts and our change makers. I'm straight away going to Dr. Cliff once again. Humans have two abilities, physical and cognitive. In the past, machines competed with humans in raw physical ability, while humans retained the edge over machines in cognition. AI is now beginning to outperform humans in some areas of cognition. My question to you, Dr. Cliff, is we would like you to throw light on the role of STEM education in developing children's cognitive abilities, opening future career opportunities for youth, and giving a competitive advantage to society as a whole. I would also like to highlight the fact that I did not see too much mention of STEM in NEP this time. Over to you, Dr. Cliff.
Thank you very much. Very quick mic check. You hearing me okay? Simi and everyone? Excellent. Thank you for the invitation. I come to you, as she mentioned, from Texas, from San Antonio, Texas, in particular, where I lead our education team at the San Antonio Museum of Science and Technology after spending 10 years at the University of Texas at Austin. Very nice to join you all. In my own practice, I communicate to everyone that what I do in my job and in my research is inquiry learning. And I consider inquiry learning to be a type of learner-centered instruction. And in my world, most people who are doing either of those are involved in STEM education. And one thing I wanted to declare right off the bat is that I am a big fan of learner-centered instruction. And as I talk, I'm going to talk about how I'm a big fan, but I'm also going to share a few challenges before I wrap up of things I think all of us who believe in learner-centered instruction need to be pushing. One thing I wanted to share with you is the origin of the term STEM. I'm kind of curious, and maybe without me stopping too much, a quick show of hands, if you all know where the origin of the term STEM came from. Well, I do, because I looked it up for research. There was a lady named Judith Romali who worked at the U.S. National Science Foundation in 2001. And she took a term that had been science, math, engineering, and technology, and she rearranged it to be STEM, and she called science and math the bookends of technology and engineering. And she highlighted that for her, STEM is not STEM unless there's at least two of those topics that are being taught at the same time. And I think that integration of the topics, the importance of having integration and cross-play between those topics is essential to what we mean when we're talking about inquiry learning or we're talking about learner-centered instruction. Now, one of the topics that I was asked to cover is how learner-centered instruction in STEM affects children's cognitive capabilities. And when I think about any learner, whether it's children or adults, and I work with both, it is really important if you want them to learn to engage them. You can't teach somebody unless they've been engaged and they're interested in the topic. Then you want to teach them something technical, and then you want them to be able to apply. And most of you, I think, will relate to the notion that it is one thing to understand something, and it's something completely different to know when to bring a particular piece of knowledge, to bring a particular tool to bear. Some of the most effective people in life are effective because they know when to bring certain tools to bear. And this is one thing that learner-centered instruction does. It's something that STEM does, is helps people understand, help students understand not just what the content is, but when to apply that content. And I believe the best versions of that happen when you are allowing a student to experience the content as they move forward. Now, I was also asked to talk a little bit about career opportunities and how learner-centered instruction can help students understand, young students understand what career opportunities they have. And I would simply put it in very briefly in this way. You can tell a student about career instruction. You can have industry or an employer tell a student about a career, which is, I believe, more impactful. Or you can help a student experience what it would be like to be in a career. And to me, this is a great example, again, of learner-centered instruction and delivering experiences to students where they can really feel what it's like. My colleague, Tripti Somani, will relate to what I'm talking about because I have taught in 9 cohorts of the Nexus Startup Hub that is located at the American Center. And she may remember that we sent all of the students out on interviews, market interviews during the week. We made those students go engage with the market. And to me, that is a great example of integrating the topics and making people understand how to apply those topics. Now, I was also asked to talk briefly about how it impacts society as a whole. And I appreciate you mentioning the new book, and I would hate to miss an opportunity. So I'm going to hold the new book up. I've literally had this in my hands for about 3 days now. The title is STEM and the Technopolis, The Power of STEM Education in Regional Technology Policy. And again, trying to be brief, I would simply say this about the contents. If you don't want education to be isolated, if you don't want it to be about the test, and I know in India, it is so often about the test. For us, it is often about the test. Then you need to be working across sectors between K-12 secondary education between industry, government, and academia working together to create great STEM education experiences. And this is what the book is about. It has cases of those experiences, but it also talks about how pedagogy, how STEM pedagogy is complementary to the kinds of technical information that you want students to learn, to both learn and know how to apply, and then to remember even better because of that great learner-centered experience, letting each student learn what is relevant to them based on their prior knowledge. So as I close, I want to mention 4 challenges that I think we have. Again, I'm a big fan of learner-centered instruction, but I think for this kind of instruction to go to scale, we need to be thinking carefully about alignment between the designers of the instruction, the people who build the curriculum, and the teachers in the classroom. You can design a great learner-centered experience, but if you don't have the buy-in of teachers, you will not be able to bring it to scale, and it will not work the way you planned. We need to worry about equal outcomes between students. One thing I've noticed is in team teaching, which is often done in learner-centered instruction, you may have 1 or 2 team members out of 4 or 5 learn the most, whereas others are not engaged. We need to think about how to make that even to get those good outcomes. And we also need to think about learners who are maybe challenged by the topic, because often the context involved in learner-centered instruction and in providing real-world examples is a lot for a student to hold in their head. And so these are challenges we need to work on, and there's stuff in the research that you can look up. Now, I would have loved to spent more time sharing with you examples like Nexus, like the Essay Smart research program that, and pitch deck competition that we have in San Antonio. Many other examples, but with limited time, I'm going to stop my comments there and encourage all of you, integrate across that subject matter, across science, technology, engineering, and math, and work across sectors as educators engage universities, academia, industry to be part of your programs and design them. I look forward to spending more time in discussion with my colleagues. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Cliff. That was insightful. Yes, last session we had about learning in lockdown, we did get to know that due to the sudden digital facilitation of teachers, teachers are creating content and they are actually rejecting curated content from vendors. So, and that has been the most beautiful part about digitization and digital facilitation, which I think even Prerna said that we've forced to adopt.
There are many experiments happening right now that people like me have hoped to see for years. And because of the pandemic now they're happening. It's going to be fascinating to see which ones work.
Well, yeah. So not a crisis, but a catalyst. I will now move to Prerna Gupta. Prerna, the NEP recommends model public universities for holistic education at par with IITs, IIMs. They call it MERU. They call it multidisciplinary education research universities like Ivy League. What I would like you to throw light on is how transformation in educational programs prepares students for future. What are these universities and institutions doing globally? I would also like you to bring the idea of apprenticeship and mentorship and use experiential learning to help us solidifying our learning outcomes. Over to you, Prerna.
Thank you, Tripti and Simi for this opportunity, and all my fellow panelists. It is a pleasure to be here in such august company. When I and taking from what Cliff just mentioned, taking a step forward about cognitive abilities and learner outcomes and how holistic education can really play a big role, is because in real life, we don't use only our academic ability. We are as a whole person. So the need of the hour, or the reason why I feel the NEP policy is also one of our really great steps, and I would like to thank and congratulate the Ministry of Education to bring it and implement it, is because there are a lot of people, because of their lack of academic ability, they take a step back. What several of the world-class universities have done is to expose students to multifaceted areas, to give them flexibility to be able to adopt and learn and define their career paths in the ways in which, or the means in which, that they can contribute the best to the purpose of their life. So the holistic learning as such uses your cognitive ability, your fine motor skills, your interpersonal skills, creativity, and above all, your passion for learning. And that is what has helped, and that is what is also told, that machines can take away a lot of your jobs, but what the universities or higher education institutions today need to prepare students for is um, is are the jobs that unleashes your creativity and your innovation abilities. Um, so some of the universities that come to my mind and what universities are doing um, are bringing experiential learning, as you rightly said, to the center of learning. At my in my MBA myself at INSEAD, what we did was a program in your first 100 days, which really meant that you're really running a company, a failing company for the first 100 days. So that really exposes you to a lot of ideation. It exposes you to a lot of principles, something that you cannot have learned in a textbook. Allen College of Engineering, for instance, has a capstone program that and it is essentially driven in the project-based model, where in your area of interest you design affordable design and entrepreneurship. So those are some of the I think the tools that universities adopt to give a multimodal learning model to students to help them explore themselves, because learning is as much as content, as much learning about your own self and what you are good at. And at this stage, I would like to bring the concept of ikigai, a Japanese concept, which really marries what you are good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what can bring you some money, because you, at the end of the day, you also need to have a career. So in my opinion, the role of a really good university is to help, or the mentor is to help a student uh, identify their own ikigai through unlocking their potential. And lastly, I would like to say, or bring back the concept of a guru, of a gurukul, which I see bringing, or a mentor, as you mentioned, center stage. A lot of universities are again doing that, and I hope to see it more widespread. Is a person who's a guide, a person who's more experienced than you are, who understands your potential, and a person who can expose you to opportunities and guide you to make the right decision for yourself. And that is becoming central in education in general. And as much as it is adopted in India in the earlier or the ancient age, I feel that as much as it is becoming center stage for your own career development, but your life, as we know that as we move along in life, we change several careers. So a mentor or a guide is extremely useful, or maybe more than one is extremely useful to help you define your reason of being. Thank you.
So thank you. So thank you, Premran. Shall we move on? Yes, you will be delighted to see that NEP has also talked about Takshila and Nalanda University and our ancient heritage. I would next move to Komal Sood. A lot has happened in the last 2 days for school education and higher education. School education for the first time is going through a completely structural change. As per NEP 2020, a 10 plus 2 is getting replaced by a 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 pedagogical structure. Is this progressive shift towards a more scientific approach to education? The 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 structure walks with the ability of child's stages of cognitive development, as well as social and physical awareness. Secondly, I also would like you to tell me, which we are very confused about, the whole interdisciplinary choice, the whole idea of taking physics and music together. How will schools implement something like that? How hard is it, or how easy is it? Komal, to you.
Yeah, thank you, Simi. When the NEP came out and I went through the whole thing, It was absolutely, I was delighted by it. And I think one of the reasons for that was the holistic approach that NEP has taken. Because normally what has happened is there have been certain incremental changes as far as education policies have been concerned. They would do something maybe at class 10 level, something at class 12 level, and then we would always turn around and say, okay, you've brought about this change, but we don't know how it's going to be impacting later in college. This is that one policy which has literally turned it upside down, because it has taken care of literally the, you can say, early education till college. So they have completed the whole thing, which has never been there earlier. So I would say from an educationist perspective and from schools, we are very happy, because now we can see at least, when a child is offering various subjects or anything else, there is an end point to it. Because earlier, what used to happen was, it used to be at the child's risk. You used to turn around and say, okay, if you've taken physics and let's say history together, there is a problem, because we don't know how the colleges are going to be accepting it. But now, because it's happened from the school to the college, you know that there is somebody, this particular child is going to get accepted in college, because it is being recognized, because it comes as a part of NEP. Now, when you come down to how it's going to pan out at the school level, it's knowing how big India is at the moment, knowing there are remote areas, there are rural areas and everything else. I see a huge challenge in terms of how the implementation of anything like this is going to happen. And I'm just taking a small example, because I belong to a school which is the Army Public School. There are 137 schools across the country. All of them earlier used to have the same subjects, because as per the CBSE, you were obviously told that these are the subjects that you should be offering or whatever, and you had very limited choices. Plus, the Army personnel move after every 2 years. So here we see a huge challenge as far as our schools are concerned, because here I'm offering a music with the physics, or I'm offering a history and a political science with a chemistry, but I don't know whether the other school is going to be able to offer that, because you're talking of faculty, you're talking of resources and everything else. So I do see a certain amount of challenge in the flexibility which is being offered. So, in principle, on paper, it all looks beautiful, but I obviously see how it's actually going to get implemented. So then you also talk about the 10 plus 2 to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. I feel that's a wonderful phenomena, because now finally they are looking at learning in a very scientific manner. Earlier, the 1 to 10 was grouped into one particular category, which is not so when you're looking at children like that. We know that at the early stages, children have certain abilities or whatever, and you need to expose them to certain things, and only then that the learning gets, enhanced and everything else. Whereas now you have actually chunked them on the basis of science, seeing how the child is going to be progressing and what is the learning going to be at that point of time. And if you look at the kind of curriculum and other things, you're looking at vocational studies. So when you look at that, I think it's a great thing, because the need of the hour right now is definitely vocational studies. So when you look at various parts to it, yes, on paper, I'm saying that as an educationist, it is a fantastic thing. But also as a head of an institution, and I think I say it on behalf of a lot of principals and a lot of teachers, the learning curve is going to be very, very steep. See, this pandemic, I would say the learning curve has been extremely steep, and all the teachers, or most of the teachers, have been able to, go uphill. But this is like a different jump altogether, because this is like literally going from a small hillock into a skyscraper or whatever, because the expectations. I'm also looking at, the pattern of question papers and everything else. I don't know how it's going to be managed. So I would say, instead of just jumping into something like this right now, which the government is saying, okay, next session and everything else, I would say with CC, which was a continuous and comprehensive evaluation, which happened earlier, I don't want this to go down that route where it's on paper, it's like this, but in principle, it doesn't get applied. So I would say spend a little bit of time, look at how it's going to get implemented, be a little more specific in terms of the implementation, and definitely teacher training is going to be massive. Teacher training in terms of the mind shift training, not so much as skill training, because I don't see any issues, so many issues with that. But I would say just this whole mindset change to say that now it's not going to be rote based, it is going to be different things or whatever. I don't know how it's going to pan out. So I'm a little tentative, but yes, a part of me being an educationist, I'm very, very hopeful that, if the teachers can actually, come over, or, can recover from this pandemic and come up with a solution or whatever, finally it will all pan out, I feel.
now that you mentioned, and I didn't want to bring up the linguistic part, but you mentioned about students taking transfers. There is a whole thing about language. They said all the early years should be done in local language. Now
Yes.
we are looking at a common language like probably English, which helps us in mobility, growth, development. You know, it gives international mobility.
That's
Is
right.
that a welcome change for you? Because your students literally move from Punjab to Telangana. I mean, how will they manage?
See, these are challenges because they've just put it down on a piece of paper saying that it needs to be mother tongue approach or whatever. But yes, there has to be a certain common ground as well. Because otherwise, just this whole movement, and I would say not just within the country. See, one edge that our children also have when they go abroad is because of this facility with the English language.
Yes.
I feel that, no offense meant to Americans or anybody else or whatever, but I feel Indians who are educated speak better English than Americans or maybe Englishmen themselves. And that is what our education system has given them, which is going to be, I don't know whether there is going to be a certain element of disadvantage when that comes in, because we're looking at a very local, they talk about, but we always have to keep the global perspective in mind. For sure, because these kids are not going to be restricted to India. So this is going to be extremely challenging as far as I'm concerned.
So yeah, thank you so much, Komal, for that. And now, like Komal rightly said, from early education to colleges and higher education, I would like to call upon Mr. Manish Gupta. In NEP also talks about, and let me repeat this, that they have condemned the rigid separation of disciplines with too much early specialization and streaming of students into narrow areas. My question to you, sir, is once students opt for interdisciplinary courses in school, once I take music with physics in school, then higher education has to move towards becoming basically multidisciplinary institutes. How do you propose to integrate this vision of NEP?
See, we need to understand that how exactly the higher education institutions work. We have a set formula where either they go for a 3-year program, which is normally the BBA, BCA programs, or they go for the BTech programs, we have 4 years, or then we have the architecture, which is 5 years. This has been the norm normally, and you have different programs ranging from 3 years to 5 years all across the spectrum. Now, what the new education policy suggests is that I don't want it to be watertight between science, commerce, or maybe arts. So what has happened is in the last few years, the National Skill Development Council started bivocational programs, and we have already started giving options to students where they can choose different areas of skills. When we say skills, it might be, say, learning engineering, it might be learning mathematics, it might be learning even English. So these kind of changes have already been incorporated in our academics. And when moving further, if we have a child, say, let's assume he does a physics and then economics. So now he wants to pursue, say, BA Honors Economics, or does he want to pursue engineering program? All those things would evolve over time. What we need to do right now is that we have to adapt according to the changing environment. There are two reasons for one person to come and study. Either he's coming for employment, or he wants to go back and maybe run his own business or any kind of other employment opportunities. In that kind of a scenario, today higher education institutions have always focused on trying to provide what the industry needs. So our focus has always been on, I would say, unlocking the talent in giving them right kind of employment opportunities, modifying the course curriculum according to what the industry has always been demanding. Now what is coming up is the industry is also demanding different kinds of skill sets. Initially, when they were looking for engineers, they were looking for specific skill sets. And so a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer, now that civil engineer might have to manage the entire, I would say, human resource of 300 people. How does he do it? Does he have those interpersonal skills? Okay. So those kind of skills, or does he have the right kind of communication? Suppose if he has studied English, or he has studied psychology, or maybe sociology, and we have people of different parts of the world coming under him and working. Let's take the example of Hyundai automobile industry. So you might have people from all across the globe. So if you would have studied interdisciplinary things, so an engineer might be able to manage not only his production, but also his human resource. And suppose if he has to interact with some counterparts in South Korea, where the production is being told, and he has to sell it in US where he has his marketing team. So you would be able to do it much better rather than sticking only to his own, I would say, the first engineering degree what he had done. Now, what as institutions, what we need to do? See, our role always has been to create an academic infrastructure. Now, when I say the word academic infrastructure, it is to have the right kind of faculty to teach what is going to be the new requirement of the day. So now the new requirement of the day is that the child is coming to learn not only one stream, but multidisciplinary things from various parts of the, I would say, it might be music, it might be, he might even have taken sports as a, maybe he learned chess in school and he wants to now learn it further. So how do I create a credit system where I can have the basics of to complete the BA program or the BTech program, and I can have add-on credits which would give him some kind of extra qualification, which would help him not only to become a better human being, but also to get better jobs and maybe manage whatever he's going to do further in life. So we might have to train our faculty more. They might have to be maybe sent for some more faculty development programs. You would have to work with the UGC. Now it would be called something else. So all of us would have to sit together, decide how the curriculum has to be created both at the UG and the PG level. What kind of extra skill sets our faculty would have to be given. Next would be what kind of technology upgradation we need to do. Because initially, most of the classes were done offline. Now with this online kind of a experience what the children have had, they might start demanding, sir, why can't we do some kind of MOOC programs which are additional than what is there in the traditional degree what you're providing us. So what kind of, now maybe initially they always wanted a huge library and an excellent computer lab. Now they might say, no sir, please give us 5G connection so that we can log on to a video and we can maybe connect to a US university and do the free MOOC programs. Their library would not be restricted to those physical books which are present in my library. They would like to have access to literature all across the globe. They would say, so why don't you subscribe to a Harvard library and I get all the cases for myself rather than first the teacher downloading it and then being given to me in the class. They would like to have that kind of a thing. Further moving, when you talk about research, now research is something which is going to be a very important part. So I think now they have designed a new program called a 4 years program where the student can do 3 years of studies and 4th year of research, again getting a bachelor's degree and then doing a PhD, which is something which is excellent. I think now you don't really have to study 6 years and then go for your research and get a PhD degree. So now with this kind of a thing coming up and the student much more knowledgeable than what we had expected him to be, so I think it would be, I might have to do some course again. My faculty would have to do some course again. I would say the entire administrators, my VCs, all of us would have to relook at what we are doing. So, but we are prepared for the challenge and it's an interesting one. And we are very, very, I would say positive about it. And only thing what we are now looking forward is how exactly the industry would react. I hope they become partners to this change. They are able to suggest us, okay, these are the changes, you please do it in your curriculum, and which would give them better employability. If I take the example, after this post-COVID, what kind of job scenarios will happen, whether the medical industry would boom, or whether the travel industry would actually come back to its feast, what it was initially, or maybe the travel might become very different. Like, when Airbnb happened, nobody had expected that it would reach to this stage. So what kind of changes would happen? If that can become a part of the, I would say, syllabus formation, where the government, industry, private institutions, all of us come together and even take help of the principals of leading schools, where if they are also part of it, they know that what exactly they are going to send to us as students and what exactly are their aspirations, which we can bring into a course curriculum and finally give it to the industry. I think these are some of the changes what we have started looking at, but I think it's still early days and hopefully we are in the positive direction and may be able to serve the country and the industry much better than what we did in the last 25 years.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a really positive note. So we do look that the NEP has been taken very well by the school as well as the higher education. We now move to the counselors and the coaches. When the choices become many, it becomes far more confusing. Already, I think we have given too much to our youth. And so Charu, I would like Charu from University Connection to come and on board. I was earlier basically wanting to ask her about gig economy, because now all that is also a trend. Millennials are driving it. 84% of them would consider joining gig economy. Post-COVID, we foresee a huge surge in the number of gig workers. I would also like her to tell her that what is the impact on students' career and college planning, keeping in mind COVID, gig economy, and now this whole gamut of choices they have. What is the role of coach and counselor? Isn't that more critical today? Charu, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Simi. Thank you so much for pointing out. It's turning out to be such an invigorating conversation. I got so carried away by what Dr. Cliff mentioned and what Komal mentioned also. And I can see that Manish Gupta is also very, very hopeful about the policy. And believe you me, as I was going through every single page of that, I did hear some comments coming from some people saying that, do you think it will be even possible? Are they getting too overtly positive about things? But I think as educators, the first role that we have is to be hopeful. So I'm left feeling absolutely hopeful about this whole thing. And it's only fair for you to also ask that why do I need a career coach or a counselor at this stage? I mean, it's not like I need braces, so I can't do it on my own, so I need to rush to my dentist. So what is the role of the career mentor today? I think today more than ever. I can go on and on, but let me, for the sake of this conversation here, point out three major reasons. One, of course, is a timestamp issue. Now, there is a timestamp on most careers, and I think some of us also pointed that out. And these careers are top of mind for us. So let's say if someone is a photographer, and that's a very well-known profession, we know of that profession, but do we know of a sports photographer? Do we know of an aerial photographer, an action photographer, a pet photographer? Yeah, so these are some choices that might actually emerge as you're speaking to someone who reads and researches about careers day in, day out. And therefore, it becomes all the more important to engage with someone who can actually dig out your strengths and say that, yeah, you know what, this is also something that you can pursue. And that's where I think I feel superbly excited about this whole, these three streams getting scrapped away, because that's where you can actually see students emerging from, different disciplines, whether it's economics, fine arts, philosophy, psychology, and biology, everything coming together. And it's only, it's almost like a fantasy world that, what can actually emerge from here. The second reason is the pace of change. Now, things are changing at a phenomenal pace today. And I'm not just talking in terms of technology. Just look at the uncertainty that has just hit all of us. And I would say, is it just a health issue? Is it a socioeconomic issue? Is it a psychological issue? So much is happening around it. Yeah, when a student is forced to spend time from 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or a teacher has to, leave her household chores in the evening and prepare for next day's class, it turns out to be not just an education problem, it's a psychological problem, socioeconomic problem. It's a different kind of thing that we are dealing with. So talking to a career mentor or a counselor at this stage she will be surely, or she or he will surely be able to tell you why more and more students will now need to go in for pandemic studies or virology, let's say, or emergency management. Yeah. And basically understanding that the world is actually moving at this pace. And so where can I fit in? And I hear a lot about this term relevant. Yeah. What is going to be relevant in the future? I think we as educators can appreciate the fact that just because you studied a certain discipline, just because you studied economics, you didn't become an economist. Just because you studied psychology, you didn't become a psychologist. So you obviously, built over those degrees, you built over that education. So that's also something I think that needs to be driven home as far as parents and students are concerned, that it is about setting up a foundation and then building over it with certain research abilities and certain other capabilities that you can have. So one is timestamp, the other is the pace of change. The third is the knowing of knowledge. We have everything possible. Every information is available at the click of a button. So it's not just about knowledge, isn't it? So it is about relevant knowledge. And so you cannot cook pasta with jeera powder. I mean, technically you can, but at the same time, you know what I mean. So it's just because it's in the kitchen, you don't put it in a dish, right? So similarly, a career mentor or a counselor can help you make sense of what's out there and put it in perspective for you. So I would say these are the few reasons why definitely a career mentor will be relevant at this stage more than ever. Another thing that needs to be highlighted, and I think in some ways it's being talked about in the policy itself, is that there is going to be a requirement of all the stakeholders of education coming together. So a school will need a psychologist, they will also need a career mentor, and one needs to understand and appreciate the difference between the two or the synergy between the two. Yeah, so if, because children cannot build careers, or they cannot, so let's say if you're mourning the passing away of your pet, you will not be interested about how to crack an SAT. Yeah, or if you're generally distracted about things online or otherwise, or if, let's say, you can't sit through a lecture or a literature class if you're actually worried about your parents going through a divorce. Yeah, so all these things are actually somewhere interlinked. And so before careers can be talked about, before mentorship can be talked about, I think mental health also needs to be put in the fore. I was looking for, I in fact searched the word mental health on the national education policy, and I saw just one mention of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, if there was some other mention that I missed, but I really feel that career counselors can double up as psychologists and work at both levels sometimes. And maybe that should be encouraged at schools and at higher education institutions. I somehow see a lot of talk happening at the school level when this happens, but at college level, they're pretty much left to be on their own, and that's not great. Just because their dream was to get into a certain college, a certain career, and now that they've cracked it, it's not that they will actually graduate thereafter. We all know about dropout rates at university level also, and that doesn't always happen because you don't have the aptitude for that career. It also happens because suddenly someone leaves your hand and you don't know how to take care of various other things happening in your life. So, so now more than ever, I see a lot of receptivity when it comes to also online sessions and mentorship. And so I think it's time for us to be superbly hopeful. And what also, just the last couple of points that I'd like to definitely point out is that if we want to foster cutting edge innovation in every which way possible, we have to, as Indians, also somewhere come out of our homogeneous approach to things and actually start appreciating unlike minds coming together. Yeah, the heterogeneity within our groups has to be appreciated. So it, you know, the way, of course, people from, let's say, an economically weaker section of society or from a certain grassroots level, the way they are emerging, alongside that, many other, you know, state groups have to be encouraged, because that is going to foster cutting edge innovation in more ways than one. There has to be, I also feel that some kind of a career mentorship cell that can be developed at state education levels as well as at the center itself, which can work with that Rajya Shiksha Ayog and can work very, very closely with them to actually create maybe some kind of a separate policy document on career mentorship and policy making around that, so that, you know, there is a standard procedure that is definitely followed from at least the higher grades onwards, let's say 8th standard onwards. That will initiate a lot of very interesting things again to happen. I mean, one could go on and on, but thank you so much for this opportunity to share with this esteemed group.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you, Charu, for that. And now we move on to the EdTech change makers, as I call them, and as we call them. They are making changes using various data points. There are so many data points. My question to you, Digvijay, there are so many data points that students need to explore while selecting college, making career choices. And now with NEP, I guess the choices will be many, many fold. There are myriad streams, career paths to choose from, which are now dynamically changing. I might be taking something in school, and in college, I have the opportunity to maybe not stick to the stream I was taking in school because I'm no longer a humanities or a science or a commerce student. So how does data-driven approach to college and career selection help students make more intelligent decisions? And to what extent can we trust algorithms to make one of the biggest decisions of our professional life? Digvijay.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. So I think a very interesting question, right? And I'll start with your second question first, right? It is indeed one of the biggest decisions of one's life. What are some other big decisions, right? Let me take another example. When someone goes and buys a house for say 2 crore rupees, no matter what kind of technology comes in, what kind of AI comes in, you don't go and like go on Amazon, look at a house and just add to cart and buy it for 2 crore rupees. You never do it, right? No matter how good the AI gets in. The AI is always going to be an enabler, right? So this is similarly the most important decision in someone's life. So you won't expect someone to basically go on and say, okay, this is my profile, these are my data points, okay, this is my one school and course, that's what I got to do. Nobody's ever going to trust that. However, where AI kicks in is in terms of enabling the students to make an informed decisions, enabling the counselors to basically come in and advise students appropriately. So think of it this way. Where you have a very limited set of counselors today who say who have 10 years of experience counseling students, who are clinical psychologists, who have like the right set of degrees, the right set of knowledge to be able to advise students properly. Can you essentially get someone in, arm them with the right set of tools using AI, who has someone say some few weeks of experience, and basically be able to increase that access to students to be able to provide the right set of guidance? So where does AI kick in? AI kicks in small steps throughout the entire end-to-end journey, right? So the first set of journey is for a student to basically just say, based on my profile, based on what all I've done, what my interests, what is the right set of career for me, right? And then you work backwards, and then AI says, for these careers, by the way, using data, I say, these are the kind of courses make sense. How does it look at it? It looks at students who've had similar sort of interest in courses, in careers like this, have essentially graduated from courses like this. And then AI basically kicks in that, by the way, these courses are most prevalent in these kind of institutions. So these are your institutions. Then again kicks in to say, based on your profile, how likely are you to get into these institutions? Historically, students like you have gone into institutions like this. Once it comes in, it's also looking at, while you're doing your application, while you're building your SOPs and essays, it basically looks at, okay, what's your sentiment on the essays, right? How are you projecting yourself? How confident do you sound? How appreciative? How what kind of parameters do you have to be objectively look at as an AI and say that, yes, the admissions committee is going to look at it really positively for you, right? So is the story coming out great? Similarly, in the next step of defining your education loans, your visas, AI kicks in everywhere. So it's like it comes in tidbits across the end-to-end entire journey. But yes, it all needs to be stitched together with someone looking at it as an enabler and then assisting the students, right? It is not going to be the simple go to Amazon, buy 2,000 rupees and done. It's never going to be that. It's the biggest decision of someone's life, and it will definitely need handholding.
So there will be a human aspect always.
Absolutely.
Intelligence which AI gives us.
Exactly. It is just enabling the people who are assisting students well enough, right? It is to say, if I need to train someone for 5 years to be able to give the right set of transparent student-first advice, I don't need to do that. Somebody now can basically understand how the tool works, get trained for like 6 to 7 weeks, and then be able to give that dispassionate, transparent student-first advice based on the results thrown out by the AI.
So you also do matchmaking of alumni from various top universities and
exactly.
So could you speak something about that? Is it like
exactly? So when you look at this entire journey where AI comes in, right? What happens is, say, these are the different tools that we have. So one of the tools that essentially also looks at looking at a student's profile and saying, if a student, we determine using our tools that, okay, you know what, for this student, he wants to do something in, say, rocket propulsion, definitely wants to do something there, right? Or say someone wants to do something in music. We essentially find someone using AI to say, okay, who's another alumnus that we know in our network who is similar to this student, who was this student, say, 5 or 7 years ago, right? So you basically match an alum who's similar to similar background as a student is from a similar sort of university or a course that the student wants to go, a similar sort of profession that the student is aspiring to. And that's how we do that matchmaking, to really AI-based matchmaking, to get to identify a mentor for the student. And that mentor essentially then is a person who is very similar to the student, who's been in the student's shoes and can guide them appropriately in their university admissions journey.
So we will first now move to our next panelist, and then we'll come back to our educationalist and ask them that to what extent do you think this matchmaking is great? If I find somebody whom I can mirror, or probably, yeah. So will that help me or not? Those are questions we'll come back to. My next panel, so I would next like to invite our guest from the Financepeer. team. I think, is he around, Mr. Digvij? Hello?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, okay, you're here. Okay, great. Sounds good. So I would now like to invite Mr. Devi Prasad from Financepeer. Like Digvijay just said, that we also look at educational funding. Now, Financepeer is making a big difference by bringing in a lot of dreams of aspirational India to realization. Financepeer basically is your peer-to-peer lending network, which helps aspirational Indians realize their educational dreams. COVID has adversely affected our purchasing power of many parents. Does that mean that the child will no longer go to a good school? So I'm going to hand over this. I'll ask a question from Financepeer right now. How do you think Financepeer empowers institutions and parents and acts like a safety net, especially, I would say, in the time of COVID? What are the other value-added services that you leverage that stitch all this together?
Sure. How much time? Thank you for this. How much time I have to?
You have about 5-7 minutes. Let me also first substantiate a little more. Financepeer is a unique peer-to-peer lending platform and is playing a pivotal role in democratizing of quality education and making aspirational India realize its education dream.
Yeah.
So over to
Sure.
you, Devi Prasad.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting us. And very good evening to everybody. So as Madam has already told, we are not only a P2P lending company. That's where we started. The team is basically we are co-founders, 4 co-founders. 2 of them are from IIT Mumbai. One of them I'm Indore and I'm from Ahmedabad. So when we came, we actually started the company keeping finance in mind because a lot of people, all the people come from financial background, right? But then we have, a lot of people come from humble background, all of them actually, all the 4 co-founders. So we thought of why not blend education and finance and actually create a bigger impact into the society, right? Because we have understood the problem of affordable education while we were kid. To give my personal example, my father is like a government employee having 3 kids, but he used to spend 50% of his salary during those time. I'm talking about 25 years back, because he understands the value of education. And I could see what changes that it has brought to me when I see the same friends which are in my surrounding those times, where they are and where I am, right? So that's the power of education. So we thought that we will combine and we will disrupt this market. I'll give some pointers here so that you can figure out that what kind of impact we are making, right? There are some numbers. I'm not able to have the presentation right now because I'm doing video, but we have quite a lot of students, a lot of schools. If you ask for the numbers are highly. We have 1600 plus schools partnerships. The total count impact that we are planning to make is around 1 million students, right? We are already doing that. This is the 2nd year of running. And P2P company, as Madam said, this is one of our arm which helps in actually creating that impact from a supply point of view, right? When we need money, because we are a fee financing company, right? We provide, to give you a one-liner understanding of Financepeer, we are a zero cost, zero interest, zero hidden charges kind of company who is providing fee financing for affordable education to all the parents with all the schools that we are partnering with them, right? So this affordability actually we bring because we have a backing of lending partnerships with us. We partnership with all the big banks that you can imagine, and we have influenced the bank. HDFC Bank is and NBFCs, like we are doing things which are even better than NBFCs like Bajaj Finance and all those. And when you go to any company with this proposal, we have never seen a no from anybody because the kind of work that we are doing, right? And P2P, which is our own lending arm, that actually helps a lot in providing the finance to fund the school fees. We are being partnered with, if you know or don't know, the Nube, then we have James Group. So we have international partnerships also. We are being incubated in the Google Launchpad Accelerator last year, which is basically top 10 startups out of 800 startups in India, because the kind of impact that we are making in Indian ecosystem. And to tell you, we are the first company who's came up with this idea, right? to disrupt this market. And we are still leading, the leader in the market. There are few people who have copied us, but we are the people who created this idea in Indian market, right? Before that, it was not existing. So, and the numbers that I have given shows that in 1.5 years, what we have done, the kind of partnerships that we have, the kind of experience that we have created for the customers. There are few schools, there are different codes from different customer. Like this is like a God coming to us and helping us, right? So nobody has thought of a zero interest, zero cost school fee financing ever in their life. So that kind of impact Financepeer is making in the ecosystem. Now, on top of that, currently we are diversifying into multiple aspects. Like few of the things is that we are creating a Netflix kind of stuff in for the K-12 segment. That means learning content where you have academic content, you have non-academic content, you have consulting people coming in and doing consulting, right? Online learning and all those. So we're creating that, and with absolutely very minimal pricing. On top of that, to give you an example, a lot of schools pay a lot of money to ERPs, right? Consuming ERPs and conducting their day-to-day businesses. When COVID happened, if you go to our site, you could figure that out. Being a startup who is actually in the need of money, we have actually helped more than 10,000 daily wage workers, right, through our startups, where people have come and participated with us. But on top of that, a lot of schools, I mean, all the schools, I said, if you belong to any of the schools, or if any school that is in your network, so you have an ERP where you can conduct your online stuff, right? The way people are doing right now. A lot of schools are conducting online learning, right? So because children cannot go to the school because of COVID, all these things we are giving free of cost for 1 year. Even just being a startup, right? We are just a 2-year-old startup, but we understand the value of this and the kind of impact that can bring, especially tier 2 and tier 3 schools, right? So if you want any schools in your network want to use this for 1 year for free of cost, please do reach out to us. We will give that free, right? If they cannot afford. And then to give you a few of the other additional stuffs, the value-added services that Madam has talked, that probably you might not have ever heard of anywhere in this world. First of all, this kind of model doesn't exist anywhere in the world, right? And on top of this, we give things like we give free insurance to the parents of the kids. That means if you are paying the fee with Financepeer, anyway, you are not paying any additional cost. If the fees is 1 lakh and the number of EMIs are 10, you just pay 10,000, 10 months. That's it. You are not paying a single rupee extra. On top of that, Financepeer provide a insurance to the parent. That means if the parent loses his job, his 3 months EMIs we write off. That means out of 10 months, he just pays 7 months. So we give them 3 months of time to find a new job, right? That no company probably will find in doing it in India. We also give them a term insurance free. That means if the father has died, right? I will give an example illustration. If the parent has died, his kid is, let's say, at class 3, and if the school has up to matriculation, like plus 10 or plus 12, the entire 7 years, 9 years school fees is being borne by Financepeer. The fee is taken care of, right? So that kind of facility that we provide to the parents, and the parents is not paying a single rupee extra. These are the extra facilities or the value added service that we provide to them. And that is the reason we have created such a good win-win ecosystem for the school, for the parents, and for us. It's not like we are doing it for free. There is a model that we have created on which we earn a little bit of money, and especially our P2P lending arm, which Madam talked in the beginning, where a lot of individual investors comes in to pay the money, right? And they are more happy to pay it into the education segment with a lesser rate of return compared to paying it to open market borrowers, right? Getting higher return, right? So those kind of diversifications that we have done in our platform, it is all automated, and there are a lot of AI goes into our credit underwriting, because at the back end we are anywhere any like any financial institution, right? But we disrupt the financial institutions capability. I'll just give you one example. Probably if you go to a bank, even if your kid is going to IIT or IIM or any higher education, go to a bank to get a loan, it takes around 15 to 45 days, right? and the approval rate is again 30 to 35%. It's not more than that. The best is 35%. We are the only institution in India which guarantee 95% of approval. Okay, that means if your parents in your school, we guarantee that 95% of the people will be approved, right? Unless the borrower is really, really bad, because my artificial intelligence algorithm identifies both the intensity and the ability of the customer. So if you identify the customer intention is itself really, really bad, then only we reject, otherwise we approve everybody. That no institution in India can do right now in this country. Okay, even Bajaj Finserv example, finance example I was giving, where they provide fee financing capability to coaching institutes, like those customers has transferred to us, like Topper and all those, right? If you guys might have known Topper, it's a number one learning platform in the country. They don't partner with Bajaj anymore, they do with us, because our approval is so high, the kind of capability or the backend system that we have created in the backend, right? And just last point, so if you go to the bank, the approval rate is this much, of course, but the time itself takes around 15 to 45 days. Best case is 15, worst case 45 days. You would not believe the base case that I have in my platform, and that is where we're disrupting the fintech ecosystem also. It's 7 minutes. The moment borrower logs into the platform and the time we actually put the money back into the borrower's account is actually 7 minutes, right? That's the kind of speed, with all those artificial intelligence running on the back end and everything. We are not compromising on anything. And that's at the speed at which we walk, right? And the key takeaways I want you guys to take from this meeting, whoever the people are there in this meeting. First of all, keep in mind that the ERP thing that I talked about, where you can give it to your network, where they can use it 1 year for free, right? And the value added services and the zero interest cost kind of stuff that we talked about as a company's USP, where we help parents to take the loan and basically provide affordable education to their kids, right? So that would be all from my side. Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We had 2 minutes, 3 minutes noodle. Now we have a 7-minute loan. What will Charu like to say here? I see her.
I would like to, I just say one thing. Just want to confirm whether we have this facility of international loans too, because a lot of women are these days going for higher educations. So if he can take up this question.
Devi Prasad, do we have facility for international loans too? Are you there with us? He's muted himself, so probably we'll have to unmute him.
Yeah, I was asking for an unmute. I'm actually sweating. My fan is off. Sorry. Yeah, so to answer your question, no, currently we do not have. As I said, this is the second year that we are running. The last year we were running the pilot. This is the second year we're running, but there were a lot of requests. And this year, actually, we have a plan to open an entity in United States. That is the plan, right? So this year it will not be available, but next year onwards it will be available. We are already working with James Group, if you know James Group, in the Dubai and all those, where they have a impact fund, where they basically take very talented students from India, provide them education in Dubai, and they pay the fees when they get the job. It's a very interesting proposition, right? So we are partnered with them. So where we are saying you don't need to take the burden, we will take the burden of your education costs. So that's why we're partnering with James Group. So to answer the question, not this year, but next year for sure. Yeah.
Now the floor is open to the panelists. Please feel free.
Can I add to what Mr. Devi Prasad was saying? I think it's phenomenal, firstly, sir, whatever you're doing, and thank you for starting something like this. You know, over the last 3 years, my organization, University Connection, we have aggregated more than $45 million in scholarships for our students who go out to study internationally. And I keep telling my parents and students that the actual target that we want to achieve as an organization is $1 billion. Yeah, and I feel that I'm feeling very encouraged after listening to you that, you have made such a big, ambition, and you're making it actually happen. I really want you to see, just like Tripti pointed out, there is a lot of scope in terms of garnering a lot of financial aid as well as scholarships internationally, because now more and more universities are becoming open to this. There was a point when the US had actually started a scholarship called You Are Welcome Here Scholarship. Exactly, that's called, the hashtag is You Are Welcome Here, which is very interesting, and most students and parents don't know about it. And that's where I think somewhere bringing it on a platform like yourself, I'd be very happy to see if we can somewhere bring this to everybody's living rooms, because somehow the misconception is that, and there is a myth around this whole thing, that studying abroad equals to expensive education. It doesn't have to be, you see, because if you start planning in time, and if you start planning, and now that with this new education policy coming in place, more and more students and parents would start getting sensitized, let's say, to the value of interdisciplinary education and overall learning. So I can see that there'll be more and more demand for people wanting more and more funds to actually do whatever they want in their life. So you want to study close to NASA, and so you should be allowed to do that, not just because if your pocket doesn't allow, but if your brain does, then I think people like you and I can actually make it happen. Let's talk, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Simi madam, I hope Anupam will reach out to you. I hope you will give Charu madam's contact so that we can proceed ahead.
Yes, I think the court will take care
but
of it.
This is very interesting, and I think overall the panel is emerging to be, showcasing somehow what all is possible. I think somehow if we could also create immersion programs, I feel, with farmers and agriculture and hospitals, so much more can be generated there as well. And one more idea that was obviously coming to mind was that we are all talking about an enabling ecosystem of learning, innovation, internationalization, and all of that. And we've seen in the past that India is a great, I mean, we are all, I think our children today are more Western than we'd like them to be. But at the same time, most of them are creating innovations outside the country. It's very important that we start building that innovation structure within the country today.
So yeah, no, I feel that we are having a Silicon Valley in Bangalore. So yes, a lot of tech is coming back. I would also like to ask Cliff, Dr. Cliff, you wanted to share lots more. And of course, the house is open to anybody. Please raise your hand and we would love to hear from you.
Well, I appreciate you handing the ball back to me for a minute. And there's so many things I would love to share about examples of things that are happening in the U.S. I would think I'm going to focus on one common theme that I saw among many of the speakers, and it's this question of alignment across the different stakeholders who are involved in trying to bring more learner-centered education into school systems at all levels, primary, secondary, into university. A program that has started in the last 5 or 10 years in Texas is called the Diploma Endorsement Program, and there's a specific one called the STEM Endorsement that requires an 8th grader in Texas to make a choice and to write their 4-year high school plan. And I don't know I don't know enough about India to know how much this happens there, but I didn't have to do this as an 8th grader. And can you imagine being in 8th grade? That means you're about maybe 12, 13 years
13,
old,
14,
years old, and having to make a choice about the next 4 years of school. I mean, I'm an adult and I can't even think about the next 4 years of my life. Imagine being an 8th grader, so, and what we're trying to do is, multifold. We're trying to get them a great education. We're trying to prepare good citizens. And that's an important role. It's a critical role. I mean, look at US politics right now and think about how important it is to create educated citizens. But we're also trying to make it relevant to them, trying to put them on a career path that maybe they will keep and maybe they won't, but their learning will be better as a result of engaging. But as we do this, we are asking so many people to work together who have not before. Teachers are used to being in the classroom by themselves. They're not used to co-teaching. Principals are used to managing a school day where they have individual teachers in individual rooms. They're not used to having the English teacher work with the math teacher, work with the history teacher, and to co-teach in a relevant way. That requires a restructuring of the school day. And where I want to end with these comments is really to challenge everyone to think about how you can bring as much learner-centered education into your context, wherever you happen to be, as possible. You know, as an individual teacher, there are techniques, there are tactics you can bring into your classroom to do more learner-centered education, whether you have the support of your school or not. As a principal, there are things that you can do to or head of school to restructure your school to make this more possible. As someone from outside the school system, how can you help? How can forums be created to create conversations between primary and secondary schools, between colleges, government, academia, and industry, to have more cooperation across those sectors? The STEM endorsement program that I mentioned is an example of this, where we're bringing, we have programs that are bringing industry mentors, we're bringing local challenges from the city into these schools in order to drive up this educational experience and make it more relevant for the students. I'd be thrilled to hear my colleagues and fellow panelists' thoughts about how you better align teachers within the school, how you better align across the sectors. I think is a fascinating topic.
I think, yes, please, Manish, you wanted to say something. Hariom, can you please unmute Manish?
Yeah, thank you, Simi. I think what Cliff just said is quite relevant. And I'll tell you some of the changes what Cliff we have tried to do in our universities and colleges is that our teachers and deans have started working on the concept of identifying the different kind of heterogeneous groups in our classes and see that if according to their past scores and their behavior, we can identify different kind of teaching methodologies for them. We are working on it, and since we have an EdTech accelerator program also running, so we are sure we would be coming up with some kind of solutions. For example, suppose I have somebody who is from a tier 2, tier 3 city. So maybe a different kind of a case study is relevant for him to study and understand retail vis-a-vis somebody who maybe stays in Mumbai and has already traveled all across the globe. So he might understand the retail or the digital marketing from a different kind of a case study. And the person coming from a tier 2, tier 3 study who's maybe less exposed, he should be given a case study which is more maybe Indian centric. I'm just giving a very basic example. So these are some of the things where we are working on, because we understand that the future has to be according to the learner's capabilities. And not only the capabilities, then those capabilities have to be matched with the aspirations what that individual has. So one side the capabilities and the other side the aspirations. And if we can bring in the technology, like he talked about artificial intelligence, he talked about machine learning. If we can use some of those technology tools which can enable the teacher to identify what should be taught to the learner so that his potential can be the maximum, is something what, though the ideal situation, but this is something where at the higher education level also, we are working as hard as in the school level. So I thought I'll just share it with you that we are trying our best, but I do not know when do we crack the code, because IBM Watson is still struggling to get the highest possible results when analytics happen. So we are only a management school, but we'll try our best.
Yeah, very, very briefly, to be learner-centered means to start from what the learner already knows. And I mean, that is so powerful, but it is also very difficult to measure. But, it's when you have a standard, you expect, 30 students all to learn, you can easily test against that standard. When you are being learner-centered and each person is learning something different and unique to them, it's very powerful, but very hard to measure. And taxpayers want measurements. Citizens want to know that their school system is working. I think this is a really big challenge in how to measure the impact in a way that creates confidence among policymakers and among citizens that learner-centered design works. and man, I can't solve that right here. I'm going to stop.
Prerna was trying to say something.
Yeah, and just to add, I mean, this is invigorating and very exciting to hear, such interesting thoughts here. What I was trying to say is that what we are trying to do is bring together parents and do some focus group study. Like our university is yet to launch, it is going to launch next year, but we are trying to build ecosystems and even and bring in more and more opportunities. Try to understand what a student is looking for. Now, for us, we are starting at master's level. So even to understand the person or the student of today is very different. I mean, they've grown up in the digital era. They've grown up, with access to all the knowledge, all the education there is. So, and they are also, I mean, I would say that they are also very aware of what they want themselves. A lot of students of today. So it makes it that much bit easier, but also challenging for the faculty themselves to be able to, guide them in a way that probably doesn't seem intuitive to them, but using the AI or the data-driven approach, help them with the data, because I think reason always works. And bringing together stakeholders to bring in to build an ecosystem has always helped us as an institution too. So we bring in think tanks, we bring in government, we bring in some of the research institutions, and we bring in education to help develop a curriculum of the program to guide them. I think Manishji wants to say something on this.
How do you? Yeah, Simi, I just wanted to say something that which is very important and relevant is that though we are talking about AI to bring into the entire concept, but I really want to say that the teacher is still the most important factor for the success of the learner. And we really have to give them, the entire community, much more importance than what it is in India. They have to be trained, they have to be given some special facilities, they have to be given the right kind of respect if we really have to become this society what the new education policy really wants it to be. Because let me be very honest and frank, whatever technology I learn, but the human touch makes the difference in the learner's approach. And we can only unlock the potential if we have that connect. Okay, and trust me, whether it was Sri Ramji when he went for that from 4 years to 14 years when he was trained that time, or today, it is the guru who is going to take you to the real, I would say, path and the final achievement. So teachers are the key for the implementation of the success of this new education policy.
I absolutely endorse that. Great teachers make great students. And Komal, I would like you to comment here, please.
I think teachers across the country are going to fall in love with Manish for what he said, because I think we were all waiting to hear this, and very heartening. See, there are 3 things that have been said, and I'm going to take on from what Cliff said, what Charu said, and what Manish said. And 2 words that have stayed with me is capability and aspirations. You know, this is that time of the year, and I speak because I'm a principal. I'm also an educator in a school. The board results have just been declared. Obviously, there are cutoff percentages which have been set for various streams. And when you look at these children, unfortunately, there is a certain mindset that they have that if they get science, they're supposed to be in the cool gang, so to speak, or whatever. And if they're in the humanities, although things are changing, but still, you know, this whole thing about, and this whole fuzzing of boundaries is definitely, and when Charu spoke about the fact that, you know, you're talking of a social emotional counselor or a career counselor and actually merging that role, I think it's a fantastic idea that she's given us, because half of these social emotional issues that a child goes through is because he's not getting what he wants or what he thinks that he wants. So in this case, when you're able to merge that role and show him a very clear path, that if you decide to take a music with a physics, because you seem to have an aptitude for this, somewhere the capability and the aspirations and finally the path for the colleges or for careers or whatever are opened up. Right now, the person feels that, you know, if I don't get science, life is going to end for me. Whereas you know that, and if you actually check the track record of the child probably is great at biology, but is probably pathetic at physics and chemistry. But now this NEP is giving that flexibility to a child to drop these and just do biology with music and just pursue it. And this social emotional counselor, come a career counselor, actually holds his hand and tells him at that point in time, you know, it's not all is lost, but there is a lot to gain from here. So I feel Charu's really given us a fantastic idea, because I'm forget the NEP, when it gets implemented or whatever is another issue. But what is from doing that right now in school? We can just go ahead and in fact, any school can just go ahead and do that.
Another question is, sorry, please go ahead, whoever's saying.
Now, thank you so much, Komal ma'am, for acknowledging. And I've been crying hoarse about this, frankly, for the longest time. I even went ahead and created a PG diploma program in career counseling and mentorship, just to merge these two roles together. And at least at our level, in a very small way as an organization, we are exactly trying to, map and answering Cliff also in the same line. We're trying to map the strengths of the student along with their career pathways. And we try to do that as early as possible, let's say grade 8th, 9th onwards. And of course, the model that I've created, which is an engagement model, we call it the road trip, really, which is a milestone-like run-up to the multiple learning points that are created in a child's life. It could be workshops, it could be internships, it could be profile enhancing activities, or a college research or a scholarship research. And it finally leads you to your dream college or university. And that's where, frankly, a lot of them stay connected to me even after that. And that's where I feel that, oh my God, the child almost felt that now that I'm in university, no one's holding my hand. So I think that's where the continuity has to stay.
That's true.
As well. Yeah. And I think
So
the most, go ahead. I think, it can be a long discussion.
Charu, this is very important. Last time during our, Simi, am I audible?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're breaking, but yeah, please go ahead. We'll get the
So I think last time when we had a panel discussion, we were talking to AICT Vice Chairman, Mr. Punia. And one thing which he brought to everyone's notice is that after doing a research on Indian student and their well-being and how they're doing outside, they're doing exceptionally after college. But after school, are they all prepared as compared to other students, although they work really hard? So I think I would, since Dr. Cliff is here, I wanted to really talk today about the STEM part, the physical aspect, the group interaction, Dr. Cliff, which we used to have during our sessions, which makes us more confident, all our questions getting answered. So Dr. Cliff, if you would like to add a little more on that.
Can you clarify that just a little bit? What is your question?
I'm saying majorly the practical aspect which the STEM concept bring, which is completely missing in India right now, is what I wanted you to talk a little more about.
You mean bringing, so the fact that STEM education methodologies and pedagogies bring practical application into the classroom. Right. Am I getting that correct? So
yes.
It most certainly does bring practical application into the classroom, and I think an important topic is how do we do that to be practical, if I may. How do we do that in schools at scale, and what kind of pedagogies are needed, and what are the practical elements of trying to make that happen? And I think that each educator, at whatever level they happen to be operating at, whether it's primary or secondary school or in university, you need to think about your individual context and what it is that you are able to pull off in your classroom in the short, the medium, and the long term. I've heard, obviously the NEP is a big topic for everyone here. And one line of commentary I've noticed is what it is going to take to implement the NEP and how long that's going to take, and whether that's really practical or not to do. And I think my point is that each of you, regardless of the challenges you may have in your context, need to think about how to bring more learner-centered design into that classroom. As an individual teacher, you can start doing, allocating some percentage of your classroom time to open discussion among your students. And, you know, unless somebody is walking in your classroom and telling you can't do that, you have the power to do that. And, you know, and then you work your way up from there. You know, can you bring in an industry speaker? Do you have the capability to bring an activity, a hands-on activity into your classroom? Do you have the capability to work with your colleagues who teach other subjects, and, you know, in order to co-plan and do that? I'd like to just very briefly, slightly off topic, wrap up with this, with a couple of comments based on what I've heard the other people say. One, teachers are professionals, and you know, to the extent that that you have to go to teach to the test, it takes your ability to act as a professional in the classroom away from you to some degree. And to the extent you can bring learner-centered approaches, you become a professional again, thinking about the best way to teach your students in your context. The other thing that occurred to me, a lot of conversation about social emotional learning happening right now. I love I don't remember who is it that made the comment about a student whose parents were getting divorced, or, you know, had some issue going at home. And I thought to myself, if I were that student, would I want to be lectured at, or would I want to go to a school where they engage me with something? And so much more learning happens in that situation. And I'll tie that back to your question, Tripti. It's a reason to try to overcome some of these challenges.
I was asking Komal one thing, which I'm quite intrigued. Komal, and even for that matter, Manish, now when children design their own curriculum, every child has different subjects. I have 5 subjects which are very different. So do they visit the teacher? Is it the other? How do you, I mean, how does it kind of work out? I've got 5 subjects, they're all 5 different subjects, right? Might not be similar to my classmates. So do we visit teachers? Does it become that learner-centric?
I don't know whether that's going to be practical, because you will have to have groups of people offering a certain set of subjects.
Yeah.
Looking at it very practically, because we've got, let's say, 500 students in grade 12 who all decide to do a different combination, you know, of subjects. I don't know whether it's going to be possible or not. But at the end of the day, when you're offering, let's say, you know, the CBSE or whatever, whichever body that's going to be there, may turn around and say that there are 100 subjects available. But I don't think it's going to be a school offering 100 subjects. You're going to look internally and see what are the capabilities that you have, and then offer a set of subjects to the kids.
If I may, you know, we have that going on with the STEM endorsement and the endorsement program. You'll have, there is this thing called the STEM endorsement that you can earn in Texas. Yet you will have one school where the way you earn that endorsement is by taking 4 years of math and science. And the school right next to it will then have very dynamic, practical programs that are bringing in industry. And it's simply because of the practical issues. You know, you have one school that has the capacity to do it, the teachers, the training, the materials, and then the next school does not have the capacity to do it. And so flexibility is just absolutely required in order to hit the top of the curve and pulling off these kinds of approaches.
Yeah, Cliff, in fact, you've given us a fantastic idea where you're looking at collaboration amongst schools, and each becomes like a center of excellence for a particular thing, because it's not possible to have that within the same school, you will be able to offer all the subjects under the sun that are available. But if you turn around and say that Monday, Tuesday, you're going to be visiting a particular school, and see, these are all random thoughts right now because the NAP is not so clear about these things. But if you say, I have an excellence in English and math, and my school becomes a hub for that, and the children come and visit us on Monday and Tuesday, whereas Thursday and Friday, they're going in for vocational training to any other particular school that has the capability and the infrastructure or whatever, this would really lead to a very dynamic system. Again, practically how it's going to be possible or not is something which will need to be worked out. But I feel that this would probably be an ideal mechanism to go ahead with the program.
Yeah, virtual learning. Sorry.
No, you all go ahead, please.
No. So with virtual learning, you can visit other.
Absolutely.
Cliff, back to you.
Yeah, Simi, in our higher education, what we have is we have a set of rules and regulations. Like these are the number of credits which you need to earn to get an undergraduate degree. Suppose once that basic framework is there, so now the child would be allowed, see, this is what has been discussed in the last 3-4 years. The new education policy is not that they decided last month and it happened. So we were a part of the entire discussion. So it's going to be like 180 credits in the period of 3 years. You have the possibility of picking it up from various streams. So you do not have to go into the engineering class all the time. So what you can do is I can choose to pick up 8 credits from A, B credits from a different kind of a stream. And this is how it's going to operate. And like Komalji very rightly mentioned, that it might be then possible that I do a 6 months kind of a program at GEMS, and at 6 months I go to some other university.
Absolutely.
Something else. So we have been told that the credit system has to be so flexible that I would have to accept the credits of other universities at my final, say, whoever, from wherever it passes out finally. All those credits would have to be accumulated, and finally the degree would be awarded. But as you rightly mentioned, it's going to be a difficult task, and finally we would have to carefully monitor that the child does not go into too much of digression, that he becomes maybe a jack of all trades, and then he's not fit for any kind of industry. So we would have to look at all those aspects. So flexibility is very good. You have a choice-based kind of a credit system, but finally it should result in something which is fruitful, where all of us as mentors and people who are going to control and monitor it would have to play a very active role.
So yeah, Charu will probably come in there. I thought so. Yes, please. Hariom, please unmute Charu.
Simi, while you're waiting for that, may I comment? May I comment to Kamal that her idea is actually one that we're not doing here. The idea of a student rotating between schools, even in the same week. I just want to compliment you on that idea. That's something I'm going to take back to people I know. It's a really interesting idea. You know, imagine that specialization of skills and knowledge. It's something the rest of the world does.
And I feel if the schools are very close to each other in terms of location, then I think it's a very doable thing.
Mm-hmm.
Schools that are very, far flung, then obviously there is a practical issue to it. But here in India, you throw a stone and you're going to hit a school. So I just feel that it's probably doable.
A great example of local context too. You know how you may or may not know how we are in Texas. We like to spread out, so that may be a little harder here. But yeah, things have you can't copy models. You have to adopt principles and apply them locally, and that may be one that works for you.
And I'm sure with this whole new policy, we'll see a lot of international university coming to India. That's the whole idea, I think, to bring in the different universities to India. As we have, I think we have inclined our policy towards the international standards. So I'm sure that by the time my 5 years old grows, we have Harvard in India, Harvard School in India. So finger crossed.
Yeah, so I would like to bring the EdTech change makers here. I don't think we have leveraged every, but we have David. So will AI help us figure out this? Which schools and colleges should I collaborate with? What is the distance like? Proximity, similar mindsets, similar parents. Devi, Prasad, are you there? Should we leverage technology to help us build these collaborations is my question to the EdTech change makers.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think there are great technologists like Bill Gates, even Satya Nadella, Jack Ma. They have even Elon Musk, right? They have already told that AI is going to change the life in next decade or probably in the next 2 decades, right? So it will bring a lot of impact into different sectors. And from my understanding, so the immediate effects it could bring into healthcare, fintech we are already doing anyway. And whether people realize or not, education is also a huge sector, right? A lot of people make a lot of money. A lot of people make a lot of life out of that. But I think when we're talking about building people's life, and we are not technology, then that is actually going to be a lot of bad stuff there if you're not doing that, right? So I think absolutely in this sector, whatever we can do, we should obviously use the AI and machine learning portion of it. I think Digvijay was also there. He was representing some organization where he talked about matching the student and the teacher stuff, right? I don't know exactly what kind of parameter based on which is matching, but that is a great example. That is a great example, because if you have similar thoughts, because if the coach and the student have similar thought, right, the psychology matters, the speed matters, the way they think matters, the transferring the knowledge actually can be super fast, I think. So that is just one example I was trying to give. The second thing that we can bring in is basically to identify a lot of people's inherent capabilities which cannot be identified traditional education system, right? So a lot of people, I think it's a very common problem to all the parents, and it's a fight between parent and the kids, that the parent wants their kids to be a doctor or engineer, wherever the kid wants to do something else, right? So if we have a system whereby, for I'm just thinking out loud, right, doing some DNA analysis, right, doing their behavior analysis, right, the way they walk, the way they run, the way their study book. I'll give my example of my kid. My kid is 7 years old, and we do not force her to study anything, right? She finishes on an average 20 to 23 books, each book of page size of 150 pages to 200 pages in a month. The neighbors surrounding me are really astonished. Matlab, they try their kids, force their kids to study. I don't need to do that. My kid is like, give me more books, right? So she has a different inherent talent, right? If we do not have Kindle, probably we would not have identified that she has that talent, right? And we have just recently identified in last 1 year. So I'm just talking about that. If you can identify the kids' talent in a very early stage, that we call catch them young. If you can identify, then you can decide, let's say, for example, who is going to play cricket for me, right? From a country level, at a country level, if I'm imagining it, who is going to play football for me, who is going to be a scientist for me, right? We can identify, then we can actually give them affordable systems where they can go and nourish their talent, right? Imagine if a country can do this, right, the way China does it for Olympic games, right? If a country like India can do it for creating talents in different segments, look at the GDP growth that we can bring into this country, right? Utilizing right people at the, I'm just thinking out loud. Other people can actually put their comments. Yeah.
Would you like AI to be that intrusive? Do you want algorithms to decide what my child should do? I mean,
No. This is Ajay. Somebody said that the human factor has to come into picture, but these are like my additional tools that will help me in making decisions, right? And I've just given an example where I have thought out really, really loud.
yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I think it also boils down to choosing the right problem. I mean, just because we need to find solutions does not mean that we keep on seeing everything as a problem. I think there are some good things happening in our country already. We have committed teachers, we have committed institutions, we have committed principals. We have certain strength that definitely we can leverage on. So choosing the right problem, I think, in education would also be very, very important. I was reading somewhere that even in Singapore, for example, there are some of these corporate laboratories that have been created, where essentially there is the corporate, a university, and the student, let's say, they go ahead into a partnership where the government also puts in some money, and they help students to incubate, or let's say come up with new ideas. So I think something like that can be borrowed from a lot of other countries, including Texas, like Dr. Cliff pointed out. So we can always look at STEM laboratories and STEM empowerment programs, like you were mentioning. So picking up the right problems, I think, is very important, rather than simply focusing on making sure that we revamp everything, because again, that would not be, implementing change in a phased way is always much better, so that the acceptability of the change is also taken up very well.
Choosing the right problem is a critical thinking skill. I love that comment. Choosing the right problem is a critical thinking skill. that you learn through learner-centered and STEM education pedagogies and methods. This is a huge topic in the entrepreneurial space, and in the Nexus program, Tripti, I have a module that I do around creativity. And when people think about creativity, they're usually thinking about creative solutions. What solution can I create? But the most powerful creativity is around picking the right problem and around looking at the problem in a certain way. And often when you do that, it just falls right out. I also want to really compliment the comment, I believe, I'm sorry, I struggle with your names, I believe it's Debbie Prasad, if I said that right, the comment that tied the educational question to GDP. And the power in this learner-centered approach, a power, not the power, but a power in this learner-centered approach, in my opinion, is the consistency and the way that learner-centered pedagogies open the classroom up to local priorities in your community, and in turn those local priorities can then make for a richer educational experience. There's a virtuous cycle that happens right there. And I would ask this question: if you have a teacher giving a lecture, what opportunities are opened up for the engagement of the community? And the answer is a little. You can have a speaker come in. But if you're doing a project, a STEM-based project, a learner-centered project, now what kinds of opportunities are opened up to engage other sectors of the community, to have the university professors come in, to have industry players come in, to have government leaders come in and talk about the challenges that are happening in your communities and engage the students in solving that. The virtuous cycle, to me, is something that can be driven when you think in those broad terms.
Yeah, Dr. Cliff, I think, so I really feel after listening to all of you, and you've been into education space, what I definitely I'm concerned about is the critical reasoning skills which we lack. We are amazing while speaking English or different languages, or being hardworking, able to learn things, execution, amazing performance. But you will see people passing. We as chartered accountant have spent 6 years getting our degree. But if it comes to giving a GMAT exam, which is just about critical reasoning, it just take us, a lot. It takes us back, and that's where the gap is. That's the whole gap, and we can see it in our critical reasoning, the kind of scores and the hard work we have to do, because we are not used to being critically evaluating ourselves or thinking. So I just thought to add on that part.
Yeah,
Simi.
I agree, and I will simply comment that as you all work to implement the NEP or to implement learner-centered instruction, you all are going to have to engage in a lot of critical thinking. And it's very interesting. Sometimes we push these methodologies, but we don't always use them ourselves as much as maybe we could. And there'll be a lot of critical thinking involved in your work and in ours as well here in Texas.
I think somewhere we all have to be those mavericks and obstinate people, just like we see in the startups of today. So I think we should all push the limits somewhere. So, yeah.
And do you know the term entrepreneur? As opposed to entrepreneur.
Yes.
You all are entrepreneurs, and there's actually research done about people who are entrepreneurs but inside of bureaucratic institutions who have learned. And I wrote a school paper once about 2 people I know who were very effective at that. And I think it's an interesting thing for those of you who are inside of institutions to think about. How do you drive change inside of a bureaucratic organization? It's a fascinating topic.
So I would just like to say that as we implement NEP, as you mentioned, we'll just again say what Komal ji mentioned earlier, that collaboration, I believe, is going to play a key role, especially in education, which is where I see, it being a little different from entrepreneurship per se, but be it at school level, be it locally, be be it regionally or nationally. I think collaborating in education is extremely critical. And that is what we may drive students and learners towards as we build centers of excellence and help them achieve the best.
So I absolutely agree with Prerna here. And I also feel that, Tripti, next time we should get the corporate also. I don't know why we missed it. We started right from school, went all the way to higher education, counselors, and we should have industry presence, which we will do. Collaboration has to go all the way to getting the job. Absolutely.
You have a consultant right now who works with most of the entrepreneurs and the industry. So yeah, the message
And
part
I
will
can also say that I have a dual role here, from Reliance as well as from Geo Institute. So while I do work in the education space, I also work very closely in other aspects of the business. So I clearly see that, as we move towards more holistic learning, more holistic approach is also something that we are going towards.
In Texas, at the place that I am at now, SAMSAT, the San Antonio Museum of Science and Technology, we are located at a former Air Force base that was closed about 20 years ago. But there's much industry nearby. We are within less than a kilometer from thousands of employees at Boeing, Lockheed Martin. There's a company called Plus One Robotics. The place we are is now called Port San Antonio, which is weird because we don't have an ocean. How can we be a port? But the reason is there's a very large runway right next to us that has become a logistics center. And that has been so powerful for us to be supported by the government organization that manages Port San Antonio. Our major sponsor is Boeing, a huge employer who's adding 1,000 jobs in the next 2 years. Being physically in that location opens a lot of opportunities for the sorts of collaborations that many of us have been talking about. And it's another chance for me to encourage all of you to think about who's close to you and who's motivated to implement these kinds of educational programs, can bring volunteers, mentors, and funding to you.
And I think the important part is going to be how flexible the flexibility in NEP is going to be, or there is going to be a rigidity in the flexibility that NEP is going to give us. It seems like a tongue twister, but the moment they turn around and say there's so much of flexibility, but yes, there is a boundary to it, and that boundary is extremely rigid, there is going to be a problem because, like Cliff mentioned, there has to be a contextualization of whatever that you're doing, because you have that runway, I don't. So I will have to look within and I'll have to look around me to see what are the kind of resources that are available to me so that I'm able to maximize the learning of my children. But that's only possible if there is flexibility. Whereas the moment it becomes like a rigid structure saying, yes, but you can only do this much, you can only work if there is a runway around, there is a problem.
May I comment? I see critical thinking at work. Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you. I think keeping in the mind we started for, and we have amazing panel. I think with this we can keep going, Simi, and we can have a master class with all our panelists now. That's what I can think next. And Cliff, thank you so much. I think here and take the best out of it. I think it will be great that all of you, if we can, have take things to change if required, and whether NEP, whatever suggestions you have, it will be great. And I really thank Simi to take up this particular curation of this complete panel and bring in the best from us. So thank you once again. Simi, can you bring this to an end, please?
Thank you so much. I think we had wonderful panelists and a whole lot of insights gained, a lot of takeaways. And thank you once again for spending time with us and sharing all your experiences and insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all of you. It was a wonderful experience today. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed interacting with each one of you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Great to meet all of you.
For being with us.
Thanks a lot. Lots to take away from here.
Thank you.